Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of HSNY's One Step Away podcast, a safe space to transform lives one step at a time. I'm your host, Dr. X. I'm here for another great conversation, another good time with another nonprofit leader as we talk about where we are in New York City. Just so everybody knows, the point of this podcast is that we share human stories, we highlight leaders, we work on expanding access. I just want to talk all things great, but the key part about this is the conversation, and we always have a good time. I want to welcome today's special guest, who I want to honestly say at this point has become my friend, but I watch her from afar as I want to still consider myself an emerging leader in the field, and I want to consider her my friend as I watch her from afar. She is currently the executive director of Lantern. Diane, welcome to this episode of One Step Away. How are you?
I am well. I really am.
So let's start off by telling the folks a little bit about your story. How did you get in nonprofit, and how'd you get to Lantern? Because you have been, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have been the executive director of Lantern since 2018?
Correct.
Okay. So we're gonna dive into that because I got a lot of questions to ask about that one. But just talk to me, how'd you get here?
Oh, it's so interesting. I'm a storyteller, so let me just start off with that. A little bit ago, I was talking to my staff about, how and why they chose to be in the human services sector, especially serving homeless people and formerly homeless people. And I went to bed, and as I was drifting off, I remembered this 18-year-old Diane sitting in my freshman dorm, trying to figure out what I was going to do for my life. I was basically an artist. My father told me he was not sending me to school to be an artist. And so I started looking at things. I thought I was going to be a healer, a doctor, but there were many indicators that that was not my path. And I was looking through what we call the Blue Book, and architecture just seemed right. It was eclectic. It combined art, it combined science, history, social stuff. And as the daughter of two social workers, I said, wow, I think this is it. But one step further, the light was streaming into my freshman dorm. And I just had this, sometimes you have flashes of recognition. I said, I know what I want to do with my life. I want to house poor people.
Wow. That was just clear as day.
Just as clear as day.
Wow.
It was like a clarion call. And, my path to where I am today had meanders and missteps and, and left turns. But there was I always came back to how I was going to give people, particularly Black and brown people that looked like me, a path from instability to home. That just, to me, that was home represented safety.
Why was that so important to you to focus on more of the brown and Black people who are more systemic or more that fall into the systemic breakdowns more than others? Because, when you get in the field, you realize that we're not the mass majority.
No.
We might appear like it in New York City, but when you look at it from a bigger scope, we are not the mass majority of people on public assistance, welfare, things of that nature,
et cetera.
But we are at a disadvantage of these services and sometimes can fall victim to our communities. So why did you find that to be so important, particularly for those demographics?
I think, I believe that everybody is the sum part of their pieces, right? Their pieces. One of the pieces, for me, I was lucky enough to be embedded in a family, extended family that had two characteristics. One was they were race people. Both of my grandfathers were preachers, one in the Episcopalian, African Moravian Episcopalian church, the other one in the Baptist church.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of church.
My paternal grandfather, you have a picture of him with his Garvey hat, walking down Lenox Avenue, trying to get back to Africa, get his people back to Africa. The other, my maternal grandfather, was very, very big in the civil rights movement, as well as being a man who went from having a storefront church to building a beautiful edifice. But he was very, very much a race man. So I've had this, there's a piece of the stories and the milieu in which I grew where wanting civil rights and justice for people who were oppressed and looked like me, it was just foundational. It was woven into so much. Both my parents were social workers. They were kick-ass social workers. My mother was on the committee that set up Head Start.
Ooh, nice.
All right? And then she went on to become a tenured professor at Columbia School of Social Work. My dad ran settlement houses and then became the DSS for Nassau County. They always thought that they always looked at individuals from the perspective of social work. They were not just a product or a paradigm or a dysfunction. They were embedded in whatever they came from or whatever else they had to deal with. So for me, I think I started out in affordable housing and community-based housing. And then like in the late 80s, early 90s, I went to Corporation for Supportive Housing. So I kind of shifted from affordable housing to what I used to call no-income housing.
But is your background social work?
I do not. I have a degree in
Oh,
architecture.
you're rebellious.
No, I have
You
a
said,
degree
no,
in
I don't want to do the
architecture
same.
and then historic preservation. No, I don't really. I think I approach change and impact from the perspective of how can I do it systemically? How can I move not just individuals or myself, but whole systems and groups of people? And I had an affinity for looking at folks who were disenfranchised. The other half of my family story was that both my parents were like 1 foot up from poverty. They did not grow up. I grew up with a, well, maybe not a silver spoon, but at least a pewter spoon.
At least a spoon, right?
At least a spoon in my mouth. Right? But
I just wanted to make sure you didn't go to social work because your parents was in social work. I feel like you might have.
I did not go into social work.
My mother's nurses. My whole family's nurses. I ran from nursing. So I'm trying to make sure you wasn't running from social work.
I wasn't running from social work.
Because you still kind of landed here. It's kind of the same.
But I landed here.
Okay.
And so when I made that shift from affordable housing to no-income housing and supportive housing.
No-income housing is funny.
Someone asked me, what was the difference? There were a couple things, right? One of the big things was I was also on the development side to start.
Okay.
I went from dealing with people who, as I would say, the guy developers, I'm going to be a little bit old-fashioned, who were relying on their HP12Cs and their spreadsheets and all the rest of that to justify and underwrite what they did. And when I went into supportive housing, all of a sudden I was with the girl developers. And the girl developers that was just a tool, but how they advanced their agencies, the field, was through collaboration, sharing.
Yeah, resources.
Working
together.
Open communication, not secret. It was really different. No silos. It was really different. And I entered the field when PSH, permanent supportive housing, was sort of in its infancy. We were trying to do proof of concept. We were trying to move from people trying to do supportive housing through cake sales, right?
Yeah.
And bake sales.
Right.
To having a reliable network of resources that would help them change the arc of people who had fallen into homelessness, change the arc of their life. And so that meant more resources. It meant better understanding who they were and why they were in the circumstance. And it also, and this is why I think a lot of faith-based leaders got into this space, it also meant that you had to have faith and hope and confidence that people could, as I say, change the arc of their life with supports, with investment in them, and the tools it would take to give them not housing and security, but housing stability, as well as reconnection.
That was a good one. So you said you started off in affordable housing,
Mhm.
kind of, sort of. And then there was no income housing.
Mhm.
Then you was kind of in the beginning of permanent supportive housing.
Mhm.
Talk to me about, like, what titles did you hold that got you all the way to now being the executive director?
That's a great
And
question.
why do you think, looking back, why do you think those titles were necessary
Hmm.
for where you are today?
So interesting. Um, I'm going to start with my postgraduate career. I started out at HPD as a loan officer.
Oh, wow.
That was back in the days of Koch and the $5 billion, and we were taking all the in-ram housing back in stock, and we were doing all that stuff. And that was a fabulous experience, okay? I went from there to be a loan officer to be like a senior loan officer in a couple of years because we were doing so much. But I also learned a lot. And then in 1992, my office mate told me, I know somebody who's starting up this new organization, and they're looking for an assistant program officer. And the new organization was Corporation for Supportive Housing. And I became literally the 8th employee that they had.
Wow.
Julie Sandoff was the founder and the visionary. Somebody in HPD named Steve Norman was her vice president. And they had this conviction that the way out of homelessness had to be housing. It was like you're homeless. Why? You're without a home. Without a home, you need housing. That's it.
As simple
So
as that
it's just
sound,
as simple as that sound.
that's still the case today.
It's still the case. And so they created an organization that started in New York, but went national. And the whole premise was that they were seeking housing-based solutions.
Nice plug. Shout out to
Right,
Housing
yes,
Solutions in New York.
HSNY. Housing-based solutions to homelessness. And at the time, that meant, when you're part of a startup, it meant lots of long hours, but you were also tasked to do things
That wasn't your job,
that wasn't
probably.
your job.
Right.
You were tasked. You were said, like, listen, I don't care if you know this. Figure it out.
And figure it out quick.
And figure it out real quick.
We need it now,
we need
today.
Because we need to present to a foundation. We need to present to the board. We need to present to government. We need to do whatever. So I was an assistant program officer, and then a program officer, and then I was a loan officer, and I was a senior loan officer. Then I left and I came back, and I was the assistant director in the New York program. And then I became the director of the New York program. And then I took a step away because I was an older mother and I wanted to have a little bit of time to experience motherhood. I came back as then the director of the New York program. And then the New York State program at CS, all at Corporation for Supportive Housing. This was over the arc of almost 20 years. And then I became like a regional loan officer because what I did when I was at CSH was there were 4 different prongs. And this is how I got a lot of experience and a lot of exposure. One was we wanted to provide seed capital for anybody who was bold enough and stupid enough to take on the risk of developing housing in an uncertain funding environment.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of what we called acquisition and pre-development lending, and that was most of what I did. But I also did a lot of like R&D, and so we would get philanthropy to fund demonstration programs. Let's demonstrate that supportive housing, which at that time mostly served people with serious mental illness, but also would serve youth aging out of foster care. It also serve high-need families, homeless families. Could serve people with active substance use disorder. And so it could serve people who are reentering, who are frequent users of jail and shelter. And we could figure out ways to house them and create a network of supports that would benefit them in society. And so I got involved in all these like demonstration programs as well as the lending. We did a lot of training and capacity building within the sector because a lot of folks were under-resourced in not every area, but some area that was important to expanding the field. And then last but not least, we also did a lot of policy and advocacy because at the end of the day, what CSH was trying to do was do proof of concept.
Yeah.
Permanent supportive housing was worth the largely government investment because it would create a positive outcome for the people that we were seeing in the streets and on the subways and the shelters, that it would be as cost efficient or maybe even more cost effective in their overutilization of shelters and emergencies,
or drop-ins or things of that nature.
Emergency departments, etc. And so we kept looking at, it was a very restless organization in a way, but every time we'd have a success, we then look at what's the next gap.
How long you stayed there total?
20 years.
20 years there. Okay. You got not all, good portion of some footing there, but you was very diverse in your approach. Then when did you come to Lantern?
So, let's be honest. I left CSH and I had this idea like, you know what, y'all wearing me out, okay? With all this change, y'all wearing me out. I need a rest. I thought the rest was going to be consultancy because I could have a very controlled set of time.
So my schedule.
My schedule.
When I'm available.
Focus scopes, no interruptions. I did not have enough. First of all, I was not a consultant, okay? That was not my thing.
Well, what was you?
I was doing housing development, which is one of the things I did. But I actually love the stimulation of going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing.
You was having withdrawal of the craziness.
Of the craziness, and also I'm not a solitary person. I'm the kind of person who really craves interaction, including incidental interaction with people. The loneliness of being
how
a
long
consultant.
did you do that for before
about
this
a
hit
year,
you?
Until I was busting open my great bear jar so I could buy my daughter a Christmas present. And
so
then
1
I said,
year
this is ridiculous.
Of this makeup consulting business that you're doing. And then you said, I need to go back to the craziness that's called
an organization
nonprofit management.
Nonprofit management. And someone who I had provided pre-development financing to.
Yeah.
It was also a sister and a CEO. She said that she was interviewing me for a consultancy thing, and I got in the thing. I said, "What?" And I had my little scope, and I was all ready to get my next job to tie me over until I found a real job. And halfway through the interview, she said, Diane, I'm not interviewing you for this guy. I'm interviewing you for a job. I want you to be my senior director of real estate.
Oh,
and so
she set you up. Shout out to her.
She did. She set me up
because she was trying. Because maybe if she would have told you, you probably would have said no because you was doing that consulting.
No, I would not have said no.
Okay,
but I'm gonna tell you.
All right, just want to make sure she knew you. Maybe she knew you out or not. There's
this thing called Providence, and I was so grateful to be back in the milieu. And at that, I stayed with them for about 2 years. It was Unique People Services up in the Bronx, Yvette Andre.
Really great organization. Shout out to Unique People Services.
Shout out. And not only did she give me the director of real estate, then she gave me their little facilities department. Then she gave me the scatter site program.
We just growing and expanding.
Every single new idea she had and then I said, listen, Yvette, you're wearing me out again.
But you said you wanted the craziness. I
got a full dose.
That you missed the craziness. And they gave you more craziness.
She gave me more.
But it was good.
But again, it was more exposure, right?
Okay.
More things. So one of the things that I always think about when I look at my career and look at other people, younger people who are saying, well, how do I get to where you are? And part of it is you got to seek exposure. And I don't mean exposure like in self-promotion.
Yeah.
I mean exposure in terms of the work. If you are satisfied with being on JD, on your job description, and that's your highest aspiration, you most likely will stay in that job.
Very true.
If you want to expand your horizon,
then you have to
do
expand.
That by expanding, stretching, even leaning into the places that scare the bejesus out of you.
I tell people the same story. Like when they ask me how I got to where I am now at my age, I told them I always wanted to learn something outside of my scope of what I was there for.
Right.
So like when I was a housing director, I wanted to understand what are the RAs doing, right? What is security doing? What's the checks look like? What does a Callahan do? Like I wanted to know that. That had nothing to do with me over there in housing. Then when I became a DSS, I wanted to follow the building inspectors around. Because I wanted to learn, because I knew it was going to take me to wherever I needed to go next. But sometimes you realize some staff, if they're a case manager, they're a case manager.
Extremely concrete.
And if they want to do more, I got to pay more. And I tell them, I was working 10, 12-hour days just because after my work time, I wanted to learn the rest of this building. So that way, when I went from like DSS to become a site director, I had the skill set because I watched for free. I want to plug that in too. For free. That was one of my volunteer hours. But like you said, the way you worded it was so perfect, but it gave me exposure, even if it was just in my building and with the agency I was with.
Someone told me a long time ago, was a professor, that the hallmark of true intelligence, they said, is useless curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've changed it. Somebody else, many decades later, said, why don't you change that to boundless curiosity?
Nah, I like useless.
But
sometimes I just be going down a rabbit hole or something that don't make no sense. And then come to find out it makes sense.
It makes sense. It comes back around. And one thing I do want to pick up that you said is that lots of times people think that curiosity can only be about the next level up. The curiosity has to be about, or the money.
Yeah.
The curiosity has to be about everything. You sat there and said, I want to know what the RAs are doing and why, what the security stuff. So you want to know what people
around me were doing.
Everybody, and how then all that fit in. Together. And that kind of useless curiosity, but boundless curiosity, but that kind of like, I will never stop learning.
Yeah.
I'm 68 years old. I told somebody this 2 days ago, I said, I'm sorry, I can't stop. I'm still learning.
You have to.
I'm still learning.
Especially
every
in this
day.
field.
You think
the baseline of what we do is the same. Like what you just said. The answer to being unhoused is to be housed. Like that has never changed. So I don't care if somebody listening was in 1960s when y'all started the housing conversation, or if you're having it last year, 2024 or 2020 or 2026. The end result is everybody deserves someplace to live. And that is how we would be able to address the housing crisis, the homeless crisis, all of these things, because people have a right for affordability. They have the right for supportive services, as well as having someplace to live. So the topic of the conversation has never changed.
Really?
The players have. And we're all having the same conversation and all trying to do the same thing. So when you came to Lantern, tell me how that pivotal moment happened for you and now being the executive director.
Oh, so I'm trying to think of the story I'm going to. Okay, so I came to Lantern. I was not looking, although I was telling Yvette that she needed to get up off me for a minute.
Most great positions
they do, but you know what? It was out of respect, right?
Okay.
It was out of respect for what I could do.
So this was the same lady who hired you the last time when she set you up.
She set me up.
Okay.
But she set you pulled up me again. Into everything. She was twice. Very ambitious and also had like boundless curiosity about and she never thought that there were things that her agency, her Bronx-based Black woman-led agency could not do, could not enter. Okay. That never crossed her mind. So we did a lot in like 2 years. A lot of achievements, but I do remember I wasn't looking specifically, and somebody else, this is another thing about developing networks.
And relationships,
somebody said, it was actually when the person was now my board chair, and we had done so much housing development together. She was a housing development consultant, and he said, we're looking for an executive director for Atlanta Community Services. I've known you forever. Basically, I trust you. I think you're smart. Whatever it may be. Yeah. I want you to throw your hat in the ring. And so I don't even remember. I guess I gave them a resume.
Clearly you did.
I think.
Clearly.
But I threw my hat in the ring, and then they were interviewing me, and then the senior management, the executive management team was interviewing me. And I remember when I was talking to folks in the C-suite, and they had me sort of pigeonholed in this, well, you're in this like fancy think tanky kind of organization, and maybe housing development. How can you lead a direct services organization, right?
Right.
It's like that. Isn't that a leap?
Right.
Isn't that too much?
You just build buildings or something.
You build buildings.
Yeah,
isn't that too much of a leap?
Codes.
And I remember telling them, I said, well, here's the way I look at it.
This is about to be good. I could feel it.
Here's the way I look at it. So I'm going to tell you, because I'm very transparent and I tell people, I don't know if you want to call it my truth, but I'm not afraid of what I know and what I don't know. I'm just not afraid of it. And maybe that is, I'm not a good fit. And I told them, I said, well, if you are looking for an Uber manager as your boss, I'm not it. I'm an Uber leader.
Yeah.
I am
big
a
difference
leader.
there.
It's a big
difference.
And I rely, especially at this executive level, my senior management level, on people who can manage. But I'm here to provide
lead.
strategy, focus, leadership, and hopefully some expertise. And that
she just had to add that, and hopefully some expertise.
And maybe some expertise. But it was more of a generalist, right? I worked with a lot. One of the other things I loved about supportive housing is I got a chance to work with so many social workers. Social
You're just
workers
surrounded by them, huh?
I'm surrounded by them. And that was my mommy and daddy. And
right.
So I was very comfortable around social workers. Sometimes you were very process-oriented, more process-oriented than I. But I love the leading with integrity.
Yeah.
I love the focus on people. I love the focus on systems. All right? And so for me, it was like being at home to be doing this kind of work, which can be challenging.
Yeah.
But it's also exciting. It's filled with opportunity and creativity. Opportunity to be creative.
Yeah.
And to create something that didn't exist.
Now,
so I love that.
Are you the first Black woman CEO of Lantern?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes, of Lantern.
Of Lantern.
I'm the first person of color.
At Lantern?
At Lantern, in the CEO role.
So being that you are the first Black CEO at Lantern.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm pausing there is because, me and you have had this conversation outside of this podcast, and I've always told you, and I said it earlier, I look to you because I don't see, and in my tenure, I've been in nonprofit services for 16 years. I've seen Black senior directors. I had a Black executive director when I started in shelter, but I didn't or have not seen, I want to say before you, Black women CEOs of these nonprofits. They may be second in command. They may be the COO. They may be the CPO. They may be the CFO. But you are, I want to say, the first CEO. And I want to applaud the way you carry yourself in spaces. You walk with a level of authenticity. Like, you literally walk in rooms and like, my name Big D and I'm here. Like, that's how you are. Like, you like, Diane, what you want to talk? I'll talk to you. I'll talk to the porter. I'll talk to the homeless man. I'll talk to the mayor. And when you talk to all of them, you're still Diane. By the time somebody even finds out that you're the CEO, we done had probably the craziest conversation ever, which just makes you just more rewarding as a person and interacting. So one of the things we talked about is, how is that? Like, you navigating this space of being one of few, even possibly still one of like a handful. There's probably still a small cohort, but particularly in the supportive housing space. Like, how do you navigate that? How do you make sure that you're always different?
Wow. Wow. Let me take a minute to ponder that. Because when you added that twist, how do I make sure that I'm always different?
Yeah.
I don't think that's a conscious desire. I think it's more that it's more related to the authenticity. I want to believe an effective leader, not who happens to be, but who is female and Black. It is not incidental.
Yeah, you changed that. That was good. Just saying it like that just makes it real, brings it home.
So part of the authenticity is, and there's no monolithic expression of Blackness or femaleness, but it is my identity. It is my front-facing identity. I have said in mixed spaces that not only am I unapologetically Black, I am unambiguously Black. That means those two, the gender and the racial expression, I carry it with me everywhere I go. You may have your interpretation, they may have their interpretation, but someone else, but the rock center is, this is my reality, this is who I am, and this is who I love. I love myself as much as I love the people that I serve. The other thing I would say, because I
But I'm going to add to that while you think. I'm going to add to that because sometimes people say to me, oh, you're so confident. Oh, you know, when you work a room or you're in these, they're like, oh, you're just so confident. You just must love this all the time. And I say to them, I'm just always Zalex. I never change being who that is. Like I have tons of degrees and all that kind of stuff. But when I walk into a space, I'm just always Alex. I'm from the Bronx. I'm always going to be that person. Right? And I will talk to the porter the same way I will talk to the mayor of the city, right? Because everybody's going to get the same level of respect. Everybody is one paycheck away from being homeless. I don't know why we acting like we all got it together in this city, because I saw the other day the rent is hitting the 6,000-7,000 mark. Exactly. So, you know, I'm always just me. And that's why earlier in my career, I would have been worried about having red hair. Earlier in my career, my nails would not have been so long. And I hope me and you are speaking now to young women coming up in the field or who might be listening, because yes, some things you may have to adjust in that season of your career. I cut my nails at the point that my hand couldn't get through the time clock. I had to. I don't have time to advocate and fight for the power of acrylic nail. You know what I'm saying? I had to just go with it. Now, I don't have to. I don't want to. I put in my time, and I'm going to continuously try to upbuild and you know, build up more other women. Right. And I said all that because I also know that you, outside of just being authentic and an awesome person, you also are one of the key players in the Relish Mentorship Program. Yeah. But even in your direct dialogue and passing, it's almost like you're always mentoring.
That is so, wow. That is
so like when did, I don't even know if you realize that until now.
I have.
Okay.
I
so
have.
When did you realize that? Like you're just like a walking mentor, like you're just walking down the street and you just mentoring people?
It's really interesting because like part of my supervisory style, I didn't really become a supervisor until I went to CSH. I used to supervise people who were very used to being like the A+ students, right? And very, very principal investigators of Robert Wood Johnson or Ford Foundation Initiative. You know, they had a little bit of, they got a little. And but, you know, one of the things that, there were two things. I remember one, I had one of my supervisors told me at one point, because some of my staff were brilliant and I'm smart. They were smarter than me. Okay. And I said, you know, and sometimes we were stepping into spaces where I did not have sector expertise, subject matter expertise. And it was a little intimidating. She said, well, here's the thing. You don't have to be a subject matter expert to effectively manage and lead your team. Yeah. And she said, what you do need to do is understand, the two supervisor, both need to understand like when things are starting to go left, right? You've got to build a relationship of trust where they will alert you. Yeah. You have to not understand everything, but understand enough that you can effectively guide. That may be humbling yourself to ask them questions and to put them up and
figure out what they experience,
figure out what they need, figure out where they are, quote unquote, got a lot more on the ball than you in this area. But at the end of the day, you've got to support them because they have to trust you. And I guess that's
the big part.
That's a big part. I think that authenticity very often breeds trust because people think, One thing I would tell my staff, and they knew I would never take credit for their ideas.
Yeah.
Ever.
That's a big one too.
It's a big one. I would never put myself above them. I would be their shield when needed. And what we had to do was have honest collaboration, and we had to support each other in putting our best foot forward as a team, as a unit, as a whatever. And I think that it's interesting because I remember this random conversation with somebody, a cellist on the bus outside of Lincoln Center, who just stopped and said, "Oh, I know what you are." I said, "I don't know you. Stop talking to me, you crazy man." I said, "Who are you?" I'm just
Like,
trying
don't bother me. I just trying to walk down the street.
Just trying to mind my business. And he said to me, he said, "Oh, you're a talent whisperer."
Wow.
And I had just been working with somebody who had gotten a major promotion, who 2 years before that was not seen as a star.
Mm-hmm.
And all that there was this whole mentoring. On top of supervision was a whole mentoring. This is how you present yourself. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to work on. So I didn't even know, and I did that for most of my staff, but I didn't know it at that time until that man said that. I think that I want the best. I sincerely want the best for my teams, my staff and my teams. I'll do my best to get them from here to the next step where they want to go.
But always wanting the best from them.
I always want the best for them, but I'm also always honest. I'm like, dang it.
Yeah, it's needed. It's definitely needed.
I try to give constructive criticism, and I try to give them feedback on more than just the level of the job.
Of where they are,
it's not just the concrete things, it's a relationship. It's the situations. How are you doing that? How are you continuing to elevate? How you see yourself in the context of others.
Yeah.
Not just your ambitions.
Yeah. That's a good one. I mean, I just always applaud the leadership or your leadership. Again, always walking into a room with yourself, always mentoring and looking into other things. I feel like we need a part 2. Right? Right? Because I feel like we're going to have to get Diane back to come talk to us, because I also want to keep digging into supportive housing at this point. But today we focused on leadership and how powerful you are. You said that your mom and dad, they were kick-ass, but I want to say that that you are a kick-ass executive director in all the spaces that you're in, as well as with Relish, which I'm also a part of, and looking forward to the growth and expansion. So before we go for this episode, because we're bringing you back, telling you now, we're going to get you right after this. We're bringing you back.
I'd be
any
delighted to
words
come back.
of encouragement you would give to the younger you, or younger you that's listening right now, that is probably taking a different route into nonprofit, or is currently already in nonprofit into the similar route?
I think my words of advice would be honor and connect every experience you have.
Oh.
Both the difficult and the easy, the accolades and the fall on your faces, they all are part of your story. It is okay to fail, because we all will fail at something. Try not to fail at everything. Try not to make the same mistakes 2 and 3 and 4 times, because then it's no longer a mistake. It's a fact of life, okay? It's a fact of how you approach life. But I would really say is have, wherever you draw that source of confidence, wherever you draw your sources of resilience and support, it does not have to be within the context of your job. It can be within the context of your church. It can be in the context of a sorority. It can be in the context of your family and your friends. It can be in the context of your children. It does not matter. Always know where you're plugged in and where you're getting your energy. And always, and this is the thing that I've had to learn, know when to rest.
I didn't learn that one yet.
When to give it up for, even if it's just for an hour or a day or a week. Know when you need to replenish. You need to go back to your sources of love, support, and joy to fuel whatever else you want to do.
Well, thank you, Diane. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your flexibility, because I was hounding you down for this podcast.
I'll always.
I said, let me go
Dr.
find
X,
my...
you know all you have to do is ask me.
No.
I don't know
But
how to say no to you.
I said, let me go find my friend.
I don't know how to say no to you.
I just thank you for all that you do. Thank you for being authentic, for emerging leaders and other leaders like myself who are looking at you as you continue to go throughout your career. Before we wrap up, I want to make sure everybody is aware to support organizations that are focusing on the unhoused, offering supportive housing, emergency housing, like Lantern and Housing Solutions of New York. The next episode, we're going to talk about supportive housing. So when we get Diane back, we're going to dive deeper into the importance of that, as well as dig deeper into mentorship. Thank you again for tuning in. Thank you again for tuning in this afternoon. Make sure to subscribe, follow, and share the podcast. Before we go, just remember that we're all just one step away from a transformative moment.